Hey, you should move.
I can't.
How about now?
No.
Now?
No.
Now?
No.
Well, I'm just gonna leave then.
I understand.
Ladies, gentlemen, and adventurers of all ages, how would you like to see the beauty of a properly offensive bard? Of course, bards can be effective for a lot of reasons in the game. They arguably have the strongest ability as a conversationalist within your party that can pass most dialogue checks with ease. Then there are also the more spell-focused bards that launch off various piles of damage while also supporting a party as a whole. But today we're going to look at a much more physical and brutal version of a bard that I like to call the Dartboard Factory. What do I mean by that? Well, quite simply, this build is made around the idea of stopping an enemy from moving for a full 10 turns with no ability for them to actually beat your spell save DC. All the while you can plink at them for guaranteed critical hits in a way that creates a nutty Nova build, meaning an insane amount of potential burst in a singular turn. The way this functions quite simply is through a bit of multiclassing, a couple of interesting and specific magic items, then of course the ranged flourish for College of Swords Bard that lets you hit 2 targets with a single ranged attack, but for whatever reason the game lets you target the same enemy twice with it, which makes it beautiful. This counts as 2 attacks for all intents and purposes, 2 attack rolls, separate damage rolls, separate abilities to crit, and that actually all works together to power up what this build can do, with it being capable of hundreds upon hundreds of damage in a single turn. The main focus of this build is single target damage, as the idea is just bursting down one enemy to Kingdom Come in a ridiculously quick fashion. But as you'll see in footage while I talk about the build, it is also fully capable of dealing with groups, even solo without a party, through slightly more interesting usage of your concentration spells. In other words, the vast brunt of the damage this build does is locked to 1 or 2 targets per encounter if you switch things up, but even in AoE, this thing still does loads of damage and has a ton of utility. All the footage that I'm showing you is solo, but for obvious reasons, having even one ally with you with some extra setup would be great. I mean, in one turn, I can attack technically 8 times due to the way that the range slashing flourish works, and if I had a companion that had haste concentrated on me, that could go up to 12 hits, all guaranteed crits, all just pumping out damage that can easily surpass 600 on a single target in 1 turn. All that said, how do we put this whole thing together? Of course, starting off, we'll go into the leveling order and choices then. This whole thing is built off of a multi-class synergy between Bard and Fighter, but we'll start by going quite hard in the Bard direction to get it all going. So first, level Bard. Your cantrips don't matter much here, but personally I go with Vicious Mockery to have a useful offensive cantrip, and then Friendship just for that lovely conversational bonus. As for the spells, your level 1 choices don't matter much to the focus of the build, so choose whatever you like. I'm personally a big fan of Fairy Fire and Dissonant Whispers early on at least. Your starting instrument is purely flavor, so up to you. Then for ability points, we max out Dexterity, max out Charisma afterwards, then we take a bit out of Wisdom and stick the rest into Constitution. Strength is meaningless to us, Intelligence is meaningless to us, Wisdom is meaningless to us. We run purely on reaction time and Magnetic Charisma. At level 2, nothing much happens. We gain our next spell slot, we get our Song of Rest, and then you get to choose another level 1 spell. Again, personal choice at this stage really. Then for level 3, we get to choose our subclass. We are going College of Swords for one main reason, which is the Slashing Flourish, letting you expend a Bardic Inspiration die to hit multiple targets with 1 attack, basically giving you 2 attacks per attack if used right. We also unlock level 2 spells here, and we are taking one of our big important ones here, which is Hold Person. This is the basic version of the main spell used in this build. Pick a target, use this on them, they can't move unless they successfully save on the spell, and all nearby attacks are forced to be crits as well, though this version is only usable on humanoids. The idea of the build is to make our spell save DC unmatchable, while also getting the most out of the guaranteed crits. As well, due to our new subclass, we get to pick a fighting style. You won't really be using this at all as we don't do our damage with either of these styles, so just choose whichever one you like as a backup. For other spells, as we continue replacing and gaining new options, other than the specific ones that I point out to you to grab, you still want to focus mostly on illusion and enchantment spells that have utility in varying situations. At level 4, we get our first feat choice, and we're going to spend that quite simply on the ability score improvement for +2 dexterity. In the build, I recommend using a bow because of the bows that are available to us in the game really, but if you happen to be able to find a meaty enough strong crossbow expert as a feat is also an option to give you stronger applications in melee range outside of our main combo. Instead, we go for pure ability points. As for the cantrip and the spell this level, both of these are just personal choices. At level 5, we get level 3 spells. There are a lot of good ones here, but the main one that I recommend for this build is Hypnotic Pattern. This has niche utility in the build and more area of effect type situations, letting you focus one enemy at a time for a couple of turns. Then at level 6, we get another spell slot, another spell choice that is up to you, and then our bonus attack feature that lets us attack twice per action, which is of course of massive importance to our power. At this point, it gets much simpler, because our next 2 levels are going to be in Fighter from here. So choose Fighter and get Archery as your fighting style to get +2 on ranged attack rolls, then put another level into Fighter so that we can unlock Action Surge, which lets you once per short rest get a free extra action in the same turn. Then from here you want to switch back to Bard levels. There are variations of this build that can use Fighter level 3 if you want to, go Battlemaster, get something like Precision Maneuver if you are against a particularly difficult enemy to hit in the first place, but generally I'd recommend going full 10 Bard to Fighter. So for level 9 we're going back to Bard, and for this you get 4th level spells. For your first one, the only one that I really specifically think that you need to get for this build is Confusion, as an incredibly strong area of effect utility spell that matches our build quite well for larger group combat. After that we get Bard level 8, bonus level 4 slot, choose what you want, and we also get a feat. This time we are going to be taking the Sharpshooter feat, which makes you ignore high ground disadvantage against enemies, but also gives you the toggleable option to have a -5 penalty on ranged attack rolls, but all ranged attack hits deal +10 damage. Then we hit level 9 on Bard. This is when you unlock levels 5 spells and spell slots, and here we are grabbing Hold Monster, the most important spell for the build. This is basically just Hold Person, except it affects every single creature type that Hold Person doesn't, meaning you can hold an alligator still if you really want to, or a robot, which is weird as this is sort of a psychic thing, but hey, grab what you want, the world's your oyster. Then for our final level we grab Bard 10. This gives us 1 extra 5th level spell slot, allowing us to go for a big combo twice as often. Then you get to pick a spell and cantrip of your choice. Then finally you get 2 magical secrets. These are spells from other classes that you can steal for your own use. Neither of these are integral to the build, but I recommend Haste if you have no one else in your party capable of casting Haste. Haste is just extremely strong, and if you have no other options you can always cast it on yourself. Then secondly I'd recommend Conjure Elemental. It's just strong as hell. It doesn't care about your spellcasting modifier, it's malleable to different enemy weakness types, and it does great damage, simple as that. That's it for the levels themselves then, so what about any Illithid tadpole powers that can boost this build? Well, nothing is required, of course, but there are a few that definitely help out if you are doing a playthrough when you're happy to use them. Favorable Beginnings gives you a significant accuracy bonus on the first attack you make against any target. Luck of the Far Realms lets you have a guaranteed critical hit, which is just juicy damage, and of course is awesome in the beginning of your first turn before you've set up the Nova properly and you don't have Hold Person or Monster applied. Then Concentrated Blast also has some niche use in this, as you can always use it to end your concentration manually if you choose to, but honestly, there's less damage than 2 weapon attacks on the right target, so it's just an optional flavor choice. And with that, let's talk about the actual required pieces to make this a full build then, which is actually just a few items of equipment. The first and arguably most important one is the Helmet of Arcane Acuity. This gives you 2 turns of the Arcane Acuity buff every time you deal damage with a weapon attack, which gives you +1 to spell attack and also to your spell DC per turn that is remaining on the buff. This is what makes the build silly in the way that it is. We build this up very quickly at the start of a fight with tons of slashing flourishes, then with our utility spells they just become unbreakable by enemies. As far as how to get this one, it is in the basement under the Mason's Guild in the city of Act 2. The guild itself is here, the entrance to the basement over on this spot where I'm standing in this corner. In the corner of the basement there is a hidden button. Interact with this to open up a secret room, and in the room there is an encounter with enemies to mop up, but then afterwards there is a chest on this end of the room that holds the helmet for your own use. The second most important item for this is the Band of the Mystic Scoundrel. Anytime you hit an enemy with a weapon attack, you can cast an illusion or enchantment spell as a bonus action in the same turn. This is what lets our combo be a 1-turn Nova rather than something that requires loads of build-up. To get this you need to play the wheel game at the circus. Right at the start of Act 3, west of where you spawn into the area, there is a circus being held. One of these stalls is manned by a djinn with a wheel. Pickpocket this djinn and steal his ring. Then talk to him and play the game. Without his ring, he can't cheat at the game, so you'll win. You get sent to the Jackpot, which is actually just a random dangerous location nowhere nearby. On the southwest tip of this area, there's an upper area you have to jump around a bit to be able to actually get to, and there's a backpack up here beside a skeleton that holds this ring. Easily missable if you don't fully explore the area. That's it for the required items to make the build function then, but what about other items that can make it even better than this? Optional synergistic choices. Well, for your melee weapon you actually want Phalar Alluve. We've talked about this weapon before on the channel, but it is simply located at this location here in the Underdark. There's no tricks to be able to get it really, just get to that spot, then interact with a sword that is stuck in the rock with a character that has either high religion or a high strength ability, pass the check, get the sword. This lets you once per short rest give yourself a buffing aura with 1d4 bonus to attack rolls. Great for using just before combat starts if you know it is about to happen, as well as being a finesse longsword, which is unique in itself and helps our damage out too. After that we have the Legacy of the Master's Gloves. These quite simply give you a +2 bonus to attack and damage rolls with weapons, which is incredibly strong. For this one you simply buy it from the vendor that is located in this location in the lower city area of Baldurs Gate itself. Other than that, you just want a solid bow. Legendary bows can make this even stronger, but there's an easy solid one that you can pick up from another vendor in the lower city of Baldurs Gate over in this location, and this bow is the Dead Shot. This has improved critical, meaning the roll required for critical hits is reduced by 1. This doesn't matter against enemies that have hold person or hold monster on them, as they are already guaranteed to be crit, but it helps for everything else, every other bit of damage. Then it also has keen attack for double proficiency bonus on ranged attacks with the weapon too. And that's it for leveling, Illithid powers, and a bunch of the useful equipment. So how do we do our setup for the build itself? How do we actually play this on a turn-by-turn basis? Well, you have your pre-set up options, mostly using Failure Aloof Melody if you picked up that sword. Ideally, you will start combat with this buff active about 5 meters away from your main target enemy. Start by using the Brace weapon interaction, then use a ranged slashing flourish for 2 bow shots on the main target. These will do high damage and likely proc Look of the Farm Realms for a crit too. At this point, depending on the target, you can likely already use Hold Monster successfully, as you have 4 bonus spell save DC. If you have a particularly wise target though, you might want to hold off one more round of ranged slashing flourish to put you up to 8 bonus spell save DC. Once Hold Person or Hold Monster is applied to your main target, move within 3 meters of them to activate the guaranteed crits, and use all of your remaining actions on ranged slashing flourishes. Get an action surge in there to get the 2 bonus attacks as well, and you're just raining down crit after crit after crit on one singular enemy. I have yet to find a single enemy that can survive this full combo. It just does so much damage so quickly. As for more group focused combat though, you can still use Hold Person and Hold Monster if there is one specific enemy in the group that you want to target and assassinate, but generally I'd recommend doing a similar setup as for the single target by using Confusion as your bonus action spell. Area of Effect Disorientation, making enemies attack at random and sometimes skip their turn. After a couple of turns of attacks, you can get like plus 17 to your spell DC, so enemies will just stay confused the whole duration of the combat really, as long as you don't lose concentration, and if you do, you can cast more of your utility spells while just wrecking the group with flourishes anyways. And that's about it really, just a beautiful synergy between some level up choices, some important spells, and a couple of specific magic items to really boost it all up. This thing treats single target enemies like a chew toy, and still easily deftly destroys groups even solo, but of course if you bring a whole party of companions around it too, the potential is endless for combos between those companions and what you're doing as well. That's the build then everyone, the Dartboard Factory Fighter Bard. I hope you've enjoyed this breakdown of a deliciously strong offensive Bard build. Let me know your thoughts on it down in the comments below, and of course any ideas for builds that you'd like to see us make for the game in the future too. Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.